She called the
This
cops
is the
on
car
me,
we need to impound
said I was
immediately.
hiding a stolen
It's
car.
critical evidence.
She didn't know the truth, that I was the police chief.
We need to move
When her
now.
son tried to
They're
claim
onto
my
us.
father's Mustang, she thought she was untouchable.
Not sure itself.
What happened next?
I'm sorry,
Let's
officer,
just
but I
say,
really need to get to my
she
meeting.
learned
Is there
what real
any way
law
we can
looks like.
expedite this?
I've spent my whole career surrounded by sirens, chaos, and concrete. 30 years of chasing criminals through back alleys
We can't
and
keep doing
boardrooms
this.
leaves a mark on a
It's
man.
too dangerous now
So
that
when
they're
I finally
watching us.
hung my city
But you're
badge and
beside me
decided
with
to
someone to
retire
write
to a
with, too.
quiet
We need
neighborhood,
to sort this out right
all
now.
I wanted
This is
was
unacceptable.
peace.
We're here to
No
help resolve the
flashing
situation.
lights, no loud calls
This
on
is
the
the
radio,
car we need
no
to impound
paperwork.
immediately.
Just me,
It's critical
my
evidence.
wife Gina, and the steady hum of silence. We found it in a picture-perfect cul-de-sac called Willow Ridge Estates, a place where lawns were trimmed like military haircuts and everyone waved when they walked their dog. The kind of neighborhood that smells like fresh mulch and new beginnings. Gina called it a reset. I called it a truce between me and the world. The house itself wasn't big, but it had one thing I wanted more than anything: a two-car garage. Because in that garage sat a piece of my past, wrapped under a gray dust cover like a sleeping giant. The 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 429. Candy apple red. Chrome that could blind you in the morning sun. It wasn't just a car. It was a heartbeat frozen in steel. My father bought it brand new and spent every Sunday polishing it until you could see your soul in the reflection. When he passed, he left it to me with 4 words: "Keep her running, son." But life and duty got in the way. The car sat silent for years, waiting for me to slow down long enough to listen. Out here in Willow Ridge, I finally had the time. On my first morning in the new house, I rolled up the garage door and let the sunlight spill over the Mustang's curves. The smell of motor oil and old leather filled the air. I lifted the cover halfway and just stared. The paint still shimmered beneath the dust. The badge on the grille still glinted proud. I promised myself I'd bring her back to life before winter. Gina came out carrying 2 mugs of coffee, the steam curling into the crisp air. She set one on the workbench and leaned against the doorframe, watching me. "Looks like she's got stories," she said. "She does," I replied. "Every mile on that odometer is a memory." Gina smiled, brushed a bit of dust from the hood, and nodded toward the street. "Well, let's hope the neighbors like stories, too." At the end of the driveway, a woman in a cream-colored blazer and oversized sunglasses was staring at our house like she was measuring it for a crime scene. Clipboard in hand, expression sharp enough to cut glass. She looked like someone who'd file a complaint against a cloud for raining too loud. "That," Gina whispered, "has to be the HOA president." And she was right. Her name was Karen Truman, and around here, she didn't just run the homeowners association. She ruled it. Every mailbox, every hedge, every decorative rock had her invisible signature stamped on it. The neighbors said she called herself a community steward. What they didn't mention was that she wielded the HOA rulebook like a sword. I gave her a polite wave. She didn't wave back. She scribbled something on her clipboard, turned on her heel, and marched away like she was writing me into her next case file. Gina laughed softly. "Welcome to suburbia, Chief." "Not Chief anymore," I said. "Just Frank." That's what I told everyone. Just Frank. No titles, no rank. The badge was in a drawer, the gun locked away. I wanted to be another quiet neighbor who mowed the lawn on Saturdays and waved from the porch. After decades of leading a department, I thought anonymity would be easy. But peace doesn't last long when control meets curiosity. A week later, I realized the HOA had its own police force. It just didn't wear uniforms. Every morning, as I worked in the garage, I'd catch glimpses of Karen's car cruising by, her tinted window rolling down just enough for her to peek in. Sometimes her son, George, sat in the passenger seat, chewing gum and scrolling on his phone, occasionally glancing toward the Mustang with the hungry look of someone seeing a trophy they couldn't afford. The kid was maybe 20, tall but soft, the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. The first time he stopped to talk,
Not sure
I
it's
was
itself.
tightening bolts under the hood.
I'm sorry, officer,
pointed
but
to
I
the
really
car
need to get
and
to my
said,
meeting. Is there any
"Boss
way we can
429,
expedite this?
Beside me with someone
You
to
ever
write
think
with,
about
too.
We
selling
need
it?"
to sort this
I
out
wiped
right
my
now.
hands
This is
on the rag
unacceptable.
and
We're here to help
smiled.
resolve the situation.
"Not for sale." He grinned.
We need to move
"Everything's
now.
for sale,
They're onto
man."
us.
"Not this," I said. Some things you keep.
We can't
He
keep
laughed,
doing this.
but there was something
It's
behind
too dangerous
his grin,
now that they're watching
something
us.
calculating. Later,
This is the car
when
we
I
need
told
to
Gina
impound
about
immediately.
it, she frowned.
It's critical evidence.
He's got the same eyes as his mother, she said. Sharp, but empty. That night, I sat on the porch as the sun dipped behind the rooftops. Sprinklers clicked on, one after another, perfectly timed. The smell of wet grass mixed with barbecue smoke from down the street should have felt like peace. But somewhere inside me, an old instinct stirred. The same one that used to wake me up minutes before the radio crackled with a call. Trouble. It doesn't matter how quiet a neighborhood looks. Trouble always finds a way to knock. I took another sip of coffee, glanced at the Mustang gleaming under the garage light, and whispered, "Not this time," because I'd seen people like Karen Truman before, in uniforms, in suits, in boardrooms. People who believed rules were weapons, not guidelines. People who mistook authority for power. I used to arrest them. Now one lived 3 houses down, holding a clipboard instead of a warrant. And I knew one thing for sure. Sooner or later, she'd come for me, or worse, for the car. But what she didn't know, what no one in Willow Ridge Estates knew, was that the man she was about to cross wasn't just another quiet neighbor with an old car. He was the law. The next weekend, I learned just how far
This is
community
the car we
management
need to impound
could go
immediately.
when it landed
It's
in the
critical
wrong hands.
evidence.
It was the Willow Ridge Annual Welcome Barbecue,
We need to move
supposed
now.
to be a friendly
They're onto
get-together
us.
for new residents. Tables were lined up
Not sure
along
it's
the
itself.
community green.
I'm
filled
sorry,
with
officer,
potato
but I really
salad,
need to get to my meeting.
lemonade,
Is there any way
and
we can
fake
expedite
smiles.
this?
Gina was chatting with a few neighbors while I stood near the grill, flipping burgers and pretending I didn't notice the stares from people whispering.
We can't keep doing
"That's
this.
the new guy with the Mustang."
It's too dangerous
And
now
then,
that they're
like a
watching
change in
us.
the wind,
She
she arrived.
It's right
Karen Truman.
We need to
The
sort this
woman
out
didn't
right now.
walk.
This is
She
unacceptable.
marched.
We're here to help resolve the
Perfect posture,
situation.
white blazer.
This is the car we need to
Clipboard
impound
tucked under her
immediately.
arm like it was
It's
a
critical
royal decree.
evidence.
Her hair was so tightly pinned that not a single strand dared to rebel. The crowd seemed to part around her as if she carried her own invisible authority field. She smiled at everyone, but her eyes didn't smile with her. They scanned, measured, judged. And when her gaze landed on me, I felt the exact same thing I'd felt staring down a suspect who thought they could outsmart the badge. She approached with a grin that could have cut glass. "Mr. Dillon, isn't it?" "Frank's fine," I said, offering a hand. She hesitated a beat too long before shaking it. "Welcome to Willow Ridge. We're so glad to have you. I trust you've read our community guidelines." "Skimmed them," I replied. "Didn't realize I needed a law degree to mow my lawn." Her smile tightened. "Oh, the bylaws are the backbone of our community. They keep everything orderly." Gina appeared beside me, sensing the tension like a cat near a thunderstorm. "Everything looks great, Karen," she said smoothly. "Beautiful event." Karen's eyes flicked to her clipboard. "Thank you. We take pride in maintaining standards." She turned slightly, her gaze drifting past me toward the open garage across the street, where the red Mustang sat under its cover, half revealed like a sleeping dragon. "Lovely home," she said, "although I couldn't help noticing that vehicle in your driveway. It hasn't moved in quite some time, has it?" I raised an eyebrow. "You've been keeping count?" "It's my duty to ensure compliance," she said sweetly. Section 8, Paragraph 3, Subsection C. Non-operational vehicles must not be visible from public areas. Gina folded her arms. "It's his father's car. He's restoring it." Karen nodded, that polite kind of nod people use before delivering bad news. Of course, but perhaps you could store it inside until it's operational? We wouldn't want the neighborhood to look like a mechanic's yard, would we?" Before I could answer, a voice behind her piped up. "Mom, that's a Boss 429. I looked up to see her son George, tall, floppy-haired, with that kind of lazy confidence only someone spoiled since birth could wear. He looked at the Mustang like a kid staring at the last cookie in the jar. "Mind if I take a look?" he asked. Karen's hand snapped up to block him. "George, we're not here to gawk." He smirked. "Just saying that's a classic. Worth, what, 200 grand if it's clean." Karen's jaw twitched. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. I smiled. "It's not for sale." "Everything's for sale," George said with a smirk. echoing his earlier words. Karen gave a strained laugh. My son's quite the enthusiast, though he tends to exaggerate. Still, you might consider covering it fully. Appearances matter in Willow Ridge. I nodded slowly, hiding the irritation building under my calm exterior. I'll take it under advisement. She checked her clipboard again, then looked at me over her glasses. Oh, and one more thing, if you need a copy of the bylaws, I can email them. It's quite extensive. I'll bet it is, I said dryly. She smiled again, the way a predator might just before it strikes. We're a very tight-knit community, Mr. Dillon. Everyone knows everyone's business. And with that, she turned and strutted off, her heels clicking like a metronome of menace. George lingered a second longer, smirking at me, before following her. When they were gone, Gina let out a long breath. Well, that was exhausting. Yeah, I said. She talks like she's running a courthouse. She acts like she owns one.
Not
Gina
shots
muttered.
itself.
You think she's
I'm
serious
sorry, officer,
about the
but I
car?
really need to get to my
I
meeting.
stared
Is there
across
any
the
way we
street
can
where
expedite
Karen was
this?
now chatting with a group of neighbors,
We need to
flashing
sort
that
this
same
out right
tight
now.
smile.
This is unacceptable.
People
We're
like
here to help
her
resolve
are
the
always
situation.
serious. They just
We
wait
need to
until they
move
think
now.
you'll bend.
They're on to
That
us.
night, I found a printed note taped to my mailbox. Reminder,
We can't keep doing this.
unregistered or
It's
inoperative
too dangerous
vehicles
now
may
that they're
result
watching
in
us.
fines and removal under Section 8.3C.
This is the car we need to impound immediately.
Please take
It's
corrective
critical
action
evidence.
within 7 days. No signature, just the HOA logo and the faint smell of perfume. I showed it to Gina. She shook her head. She didn't waste any time. She thinks pressure works, I said. She's used to people folding. I tucked the notice into a folder on my desk labeled HOA Correspondence, a habit born from decades of evidence gathering. Old instincts die hard. The next few days, I caught Karen's car passing by my house more often. Slow, deliberate. Once, I even saw her walking George up to the driveway, pointing at the Mustang and whispering something I couldn't hear. He grinned, nodding. Whatever it wasn't neighborly. On Saturday morning, while I was tightening bolts on the carburetor, George showed up again. Alone this time. He leaned against the fence, chewing gum. Hey, he said, if you ever decide to sell, my mom knows a guy who restores classics. Could make you a good offer. I didn't even look up. Not interested. He shrugged. Your call. But cars like that, people steal them all the time. Just saying. I finally met his eyes. Then maybe they should learn what happens when they mess with the wrong car. He blinked, confused. Then he laughed like it was a joke. Sure thing, old man. And with that, he walked off. Gina stepped out a few moments later, drying her hands. What did he want? Nothing worth repeating. But inside, that old instinct stirred again. Something was coming. I could feel it in the air, like the calm before a thunderstorm. The Mustang gleamed beneath the light, and for the first time, I caught myself whispering to it like my father used to. Hang tight, girl. They have no idea who they're messing with. The next morning started like any other. Birds chirping, sprinklers hissing, coffee brewing. But there was something different in the air. The kind of quiet that doesn't mean peace. The kind that means someone's plotting. When I stepped outside to grab the paper, a bright yellow envelope was tucked under my windshield wiper. HOA notice of violation. I tore it open. Non-operational vehicle visible from street. Failure to comply within 48 hours may result in fines or towing. Section 8, Paragraph 3, Subsection C. No surprise. Karen had officially fired the first shot. Inside the envelope was a photo of my Mustang, taken from the street at night. Flash glare, timestamp, perfect composition, like evidence in a case file. Someone had been standing outside my home while we slept. I brought the letter inside. Gina took one look and rolled her eyes. She's actually documenting it? Yep, I said. She's building a paper trail. Frank, that's insane. It's calculated, I replied. She wants me to break first. That's what bullies do. I put the letter in the same folder labeled HOA Correspondence, now starting to get thicker. Later that afternoon, I saw Karen and George outside, talking to a few neighbors near the mailboxes. Her tone was low, pleasant, rehearsed, the voice of manipulation. Every now and then, their eyes flicked toward my house. The neighbors nodded politely, uncomfortable but compliant. That's how she worked. Slowly, quietly planting seeds. By evening, my phone pinged with an email. Subject: Community concern regarding vehicle compliance. Sender: Willow Ridge HOA. But the email signature was Karen's. It wasn't just about my car now. The email CC'd half the neighborhood. A public shaming, disguised as transparency. We've received multiple concerns regarding unregistered vehicles in the community. Please ensure compliance to maintain neighborhood standards. Not a single name mentioned, but everyone knew exactly who she was talking about. I stared at the screen, jaw tight. Gina glanced over my shoulder. She's baiting you, she said softly. I know. So what are you going to do? I smiled faintly. Wait. 3 days later, another letter arrived. This time slipped under the front door. No envelope. Just a folded notice that smelled faintly of her perfume. Failure to respond will result in enforcement action. Enforcement. That word hit differently when you've worn the badge for 30 years. That night, I sat at my desk, staring at the growing pile of paperwork. The irony wasn't lost on me, the former chief of police, targeted by an HOA president acting like a one-woman SWAT team. Gina came in holding 2 mugs of coffee. She set one down and leaned on the desk. She's not going to stop, is she? Nope, I said. She thinks she's the law here. Gina smirked. Must be hard for her ego, running into someone who actually is. I chuckled. That's what makes this fun. The next morning, I decided to play her game. I rolled the Mustang fully into the driveway, pulled the cover off completely, and polished it until it gleamed like liquid fire under the sun. Chrome, spotless. Tires, clean. Hood up, showing that pristine engine block. If Karen wanted a spectacle, she was going to get one. Right on cue, her Lexus crawled by, window rolled halfway down. Her sunglasses hid her eyes, but I could see the disapproval in her frown. She slowed just enough to take a photo. I waved cheerfully. Gina was standing by the porch, sipping coffee, grinning. You're enjoying this way too much. Document this too, I said, smiling. It'll make a great exhibit later. That afternoon, a new neighbor stopped by. A kind man named Tony who lived 3 houses down. Word of advice, he said quietly, glancing over his shoulder. Don't let her scare you. Last year she fined me for having a garden gnome inconsistent with the community aesthetic. You're kidding, he shook his head. She's got her own little regime running. Most folks just pay to avoid the drama. Not me, I said. I don't pay extortion. Tony grinned. Then buckle up, Chief. By the end of the week, 3 more notices arrived, each one more aggressive than the last. Final warning. Immediate action required. Failure to comply will result in vehicle removal. Karen wasn't bluffing anymore. She was escalating. Then came the twist. Saturday morning, Gina shook me awake. Frank, you need to see this. I stumbled to the window. A small orange sticker was plastered to the Mustang's windshield. Impound notice. Pending removal. My jaw tightened. That wasn't an HOA form. It was an official-looking document, complete with city seal and barcode. But something about it was off: the font, the alignment, the signature. Fake. I'd seen enough forged citations in my career to spot one blindfolded. She's forging documents now, Gina said, disbelief in her voice. I nodded slowly. She just turned this from harassment into a crime. I took photos of everything. Sticker, signatures, timestamps, and filed them neatly in a new folder. Evidence. That evening, Karen came strutting up the driveway like she owned it. Clipboard in hand, confidence radiating off her like perfume. George followed, smirking. Evening, Mrs. Truman, I said evenly. Can I help you? Oh, I just wanted to remind you. Your vehicle will be towed tomorrow morning. You've left me no choice. On what authority? The association's bylaws. I crossed my arms. And the fake city notice you put on my car? Which bylaw covers forgery? Her smile froze. I don't know what you mean. I stepped closer, my tone low, calm, but cutting. I've seen thousands of fake documents in my time. You might want to double-check your sources before you start printing city seals. For the first time, she faltered. George glanced between us, uneasy. Mom, let's just go. But she wasn't done. You can't intimidate me, Mr. Dillon. I'll be contacting the authorities if this continues. I leaned in, just enough for her to hear the quiet steel in my voice. Please do. She turned on her heel, dragging her son away. As she walked off, Gina appeared beside me, shaking her head. You know she's actually going to call, right? Oh, I'm counting on it, I said, eyes locked on the Mustang gleaming under the streetlight, because the next move was hers, and I knew exactly how that would end. It had been just over a week since Karen's fake impound notice, and things around Willow Ridge had gone strangely quiet. Too quiet. When people like Karen go silent, it's never peace, it's plotting. And this time, I had the feeling I wasn't the only one she was working on. The first clue came one warm afternoon while I was in the garage, elbow deep in the Mustang's engine bay. A shadow fell across the floor. I looked up. It was George. Again. He leaned against the doorframe, chewing gum, sunglasses on, trying to look casual. But that fake coolness didn't hide the greed flickering behind his grin. Hey, he said. Heard my mom's been giving you a hard time. Just a misunderstanding, I said, not looking up from the carburetor. Yeah, she gets a little intense about rules. He laughed awkwardly, then nodded toward the car. You ever get her running? Not yet, I replied. He stepped closer, hands in his pockets. Man, this thing's a beast. A real boss 429. You don't see many of these anymore. You know, my mom says it's a shame you keep it sitting like this. Says someone should give it the attention it deserves. I tightened the wrench slowly, keeping my voice even. She's entitled to her opinion. Doesn't mean she's right. He smirked. Well, if you ever change your mind, I take good care of it. My buddy runs a custom garage. We could restore it, split the profit 50-50. You'd make a killing. I finally looked up at him. Kid, this car isn't for sale, and it's not a project for profit. It's family. He blinked, confused. Family? It was my father's. Every bolt, every dent, every mile. It's his story. You don't sell stories. That should have ended it, but I saw something change in his expression. The moment I mentioned its value beyond money, his eyes darkened with a kind of resentment. The spoiled kind. The kind that wants what it can't have. He shrugged, but I could tell he wasn't letting it go. All right, suit yourself. He started walking away, then called over his shoulder. But, you might want to park it somewhere safer. People talk. Nice car like that could disappear. I watched him go, that last sentence hanging in the air like smoke. It wasn't advice. It was a warning. That evening, Gina and I sat on the porch as the sky burned orange and gold. She was scrolling through her tablet, reading community emails, when she suddenly frowned. What's wrong? I asked. She turned the screen toward me. Karen just posted this on the HOA forum. It read, as a reminder to all residents, unregistered vehicles and junk restorations left in driveways are considered violations. Such vehicles may lower property values and attract theft. Gina shook her head. She's not even hiding it now. I smiled faintly. Nope. And she's setting the stage. For what? For something bigger. Over the next few days, I started noticing small things. Subtle but deliberate. The same white SUV driving by the house 3 times in an hour. A drone hovering over the garage one morning. Footprints in the gravel near the side gate. Gina was furious. She's spying on us now? Looks that way, I said. But that's fine. Let her collect all the fake evidence she wants. Because now it wasn't just about my car. It was about control. And I could see the cracks forming. One night, around 9 p.m., I stepped outside to check the locks on the garage. The street was quiet, except for the faint hum of crickets. As I reached for the door handle, I noticed something on the ground. A fresh set of tire tracks, wide and shallow, leading up to the curb and back out again. Someone had stopped here. I turned, scanning the dark street. A porch light flickered 2 houses down, but otherwise silence. Still, I could feel it. The kind of tension that makes your heartbeat echo in your ears. The next morning, Karen was walking her dog, if you could call it that. A tiny, trembling white fluff ball wearing a rhinestone collar. She smiled too wide as she passed my house. "Morning, Mr. Dillon. Sleep well." "Like a baby," I said. "How about you?" "Oh, wonderful," she chirped. "Although, there was a strange vehicle parked near your driveway late last night. You might want to report that." I smiled slowly. "Already did." The color drained slightly from her face. I hadn't, of course, but the message landed. She walked away faster than she'd arrived. Later that afternoon, Tony dropped by again with a cup of coffee. "Chief, you might want to keep an eye out. I overheard Karen at the post boxes this morning. She said something about taking matters into her own hands." I chuckled. "She's getting desperate." "Desperate people do dumb things," he said. "And with that kid of hers egging her on? That's a bad mix." He wasn't wrong. That night, I found out just how bad that mix could get. It was close to midnight. Gina was already asleep when I heard it, the faint metallic clink of the garage handle. I moved quietly, years of training taking over. I grabbed the flashlight from the nightstand and crept to the window. Outside, 2 figures stood by the garage door. One tall and lean, the other smaller, wearing a white sweater that glowed faintly in the moonlight. Karen and George. She whispered something, pointing at the lock. George tugged at it, testing the latch. The door rattled softly. My pulse stayed steady, but my jaw clenched. They were actually trying to open it. I flicked on the outdoor floodlights. They both froze like deer in headlights. Karen gasped, pulling her hand away from the door. George stammered, We thought we heard something." "Yeah," I said, stepping outside, voice low and calm. "That's called trespassing." Karen straightened, her mask snapping back into place. "We were just checking on the property. There have been thefts, you know." "Good thing you're on the case," I said dryly. "Now get off my driveway." She opened her mouth to argue, but George grabbed her arm. "Mom, come on." They left quickly, muttering under their breath. Gina appeared behind me, sleepy but alert. "Did that just happen?" "Yep. Frank. They were trying to break into the garage." "I know." I looked back at the Mustang, gleaming beneath the fluorescent light. "And tomorrow, she's going to make her biggest mistake yet. Because when people like Karen lose control, they don't stop, they escalate. And she was about to take it to the next level." By the time the weekend rolled around, Karen's mask of politeness had completely cracked. Whatever game she was playing before had shifted gears. This wasn't subtle anymore. This was war. The morning after she and George tried to break into my garage, I walked outside to find a bright red sign staked into my lawn. Notice, property in violation, HOA review pending. Bold black letters, centered perfectly, laminated. And underneath, taped neatly to the post, was a photo of my Mustang, again, this time with the words unregistered, unsafe, unapproved, printed in Karen's fancy HOA font. Gina came out behind me, hair still messy from sleep. She stopped dead when she saw it. "You've got to be kidding." "Karen doesn't kid," I muttered. I pulled the sign out of the ground, folded it in half, and set it on the porch. "All right, enough games." Gina sighed. "What are you going to do?" "Not yet," I said. "Let her keep digging her own hole." That day, I noticed the neighbors acting different. Conversations stopped when I passed. A few looked away when I waved. Word travels fast when the HOA president's spreading it. Tony caught me at the mailbox later that afternoon, his expression cautious. "She's telling people you're refusing inspections. Says you're a security risk." I chuckled under my breath. "Security risk? That's a new one." "Yeah," he said. "She told one family you're storing illegal weapons in your garage." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? Guess my socket wrench is more dangerous than I thought." Tony leaned closer. "She's crossing lines, Frank. You can't just ignore her forever." He was right. But after years of police work, I'd learned something about power-hungry people. If you act too soon, they play the victim. If you wait long enough, they hang themselves with their own rope. So I waited. The next blow came in my mailbox, a thick envelope with a printed seal that looked official. HOA fine summary. Inside were 3 separate fines. Non-operational vehicle visible from the street, $500. Garage use violation, $250. Failure to comply with safety inspection, $750. Each one signed by Acting Compliance Director, K. Truman. I almost laughed. She promoted herself. Gina read the papers and slammed them down. She can't just make up positions, Frank. Technically, she can, I said, until someone stops her. And that someone's supposed to be you. Exactly. I opened my laptop, scanned each page and saved the files. Evidence folder, growing nicely. Over the next few days, things escalated fast. Karen started sending HOA inspectors, really just her friends with clipboards, to document ongoing violations. They took photos of my yard, my mailbox, even my trash bins. Once, I caught one of them peeking through the garage window with a phone camera. When I opened the door, he nearly dropped the phone. Maintenance check. Sure, I said. Let me see your badge. He froze. Don't have one? Then get off my property. That night, I installed motion lights and a few discrete cameras around the garage. Old habits. I didn't plan on using them yet, but I knew I'd need proof soon. A few nights later, I woke to a faint buzzing sound. At first, I thought it was the AC unit. Then I saw it, just outside the window, hovering above the driveway. A drone. Small, black, with flashing green lights. I stepped quietly onto the porch. The drone tilted toward me, the camera lens glinting. It hovered there for a second, then zipped off toward Karen's house. Gina joined me at the door, arms folded. She's spying on us with a drone? Looks like it. This is insane. No, I said quietly. This is desperation. The next morning, I printed out the footage from my new cameras, high-definition stills of the drone hovering over my property. I tucked them into a new envelope labeled Evidence Surveillance Violation. When I got to the mailbox, Karen was already there, chatting with another neighbor. She turned when she saw me, flashing that artificial smile. Good morning, Mr. Dillon. I smiled right back. Morning, Mrs. Truman. Say, you wouldn't happen to know anyone flying a drone around the neighborhood, would you? Her smile stiffened. A drone? No, certainly not. Strange, I said. Caught one on camera last night. Got some great shots. Even caught it landing in your driveway. Her sunglasses couldn't hide the flicker in her eyes. She recovered quickly. You must be mistaken. Maybe. I'll just forward the footage to the city. They can verify. Her expression twitched. That won't be necessary. Then I'm sure it won't be a problem. I walked off, leaving her standing there, clutching her clipboard like a shield. That night, Gina and I sat at the kitchen table. She's losing it, Gina said. But I think she's planning something bigger. She is, I said. And when she does, she's going to expose herself completely. Gina tilted her head. How can you be so sure? Because people like her always overplay their hand. They can't stand not having the last word. Right on cue, my phone buzzed. A new email from the HOA. Subject: formal complaint filed. City authorities notified. I opened it. Dear Mr. Dillon, due to your continued noncompliance, this matter has been escalated to local law enforcement. Expect a visit for verification of vehicle registration and ownership. Gina looked at me, eyes wide. She called the cops on you? I leaned back, calm as ever. Oh, she called them all right. A slow smile crept across my face. Only thing is, I said, sipping my coffee, she has no idea who's going to answer. It happened on a Thursday morning. Clear sky, soft breeze, the kind of day that tricks you into thinking everything's fine. Gina was watering the front lawn while I was polishing the Mustang's chrome bumper, the sunlight glinting off it like glass. Peaceful, normal, until two black and white patrol cars rolled slowly into the cul-de-sac. Their sirens were off, but the lights flickered faintly, that subtle warning glow. Neighbors peeked from their windows. Curtains twitched. A few stepped outside, phones already in hand. Gina froze, hose still running. "Frank," she whispered. "Please tell me this isn't what I think it is." "Oh, it's exactly what you think it is," I said calmly, wiping my hands on a rag. The cruisers stopped right in front of my driveway. Two officers stepped out, both young, both trying hard to look serious. One of them adjusted his body cam. The other glanced awkwardly at his clipboard. And then, like clockwork, Karen appeared. She came striding down the sidewalk, heels clicking like gunfire, sunglasses gleaming. Clipboard in hand, confidence radiating off her like she was leading a parade. "There they are, officers," she called out dramatically. "That's the vehicle in question." You could have heard a pin drop. The neighbors had gathered now, all eyes on the red Mustang gleaming in my driveway. The taller officer cleared his throat. "Sir, are you the owner of this vehicle?" I nodded. "That's right. We received a report of a stolen car matching this description. Classic Ford Mustang, 1969, red, plate ending in 173. I almost smiled. She'd actually done it. Karen stepped closer, voice sharp. "Yes, officer, that's the one. I've been telling the association about it for weeks. It doesn't move, it's not registered, and I have reason to believe it's been illegally stored here." The officer looked at me apologetically. "Sir, do you have any proof of ownership?" I nodded slowly. "Sure do." I walked into the garage and returned with a small lockbox. Inside was a folder, original title, registration, and maintenance records all signed and sealed. I handed them over. The younger officer flipped through them, his brows lifting slightly. Everything matched perfectly. Karen frowned. "Those could be forged." I chuckled under my breath. "Funny you should say that, considering the last fake document I found came from your office." Her head snapped toward me. "Excuse me?" "Yeah," I said, calmly pulling out my phone. "See this?" I showed her a photo of the impound notice she'd taped to my windshield, complete with a counterfeit city seal. "That's a crime, Karen. Forgery of government documents." Her confident smile wavered for the first time. The tall officer shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, did you issue this notice?" Karen's tone turned defensive. "Of course not. That must be some kind of misunderstanding." The HOA simply forwarded. "Ma'am," he cut in, "we can trace the print source on these. It'll take about 10 minutes at the station." Karen's face flushed red. I don't appreciate being accused." "Then maybe stop calling the cops on innocent people," I said quietly. The young officer cleared his throat again, glancing between us. "Sir, I don't mean to pry, but could I see a form of ID just to close out the report?" I smiled and reached into my wallet. "Of course." I handed him a leather case. He opened it and froze. Inside, gleaming under the morning sun, was a gold badge. "Chief of Police, City of Harlington." The officer blinked. "Sir, you're retired," I said. "Mostly." For a moment, everything went dead quiet. Even the wind seemed to pause. Then, as the realization hit, the younger officer's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. Karen's voice cracked. You're a cop?" I looked at her, calm as ever. "Was. Chief, actually. 28 years. You just called the police on the police." The neighbors erupted into whispers. Someone even laughed quietly from across the street. Karen's face turned white, then red, then pale again. "This is absurd. I didn't know." "You didn't care to know," I interrupted. "You just assumed. You saw something you didn't understand, and instead of asking, you weaponized authority you don't actually have." George appeared at the edge of the crowd, looking mortified. "Mom, can we just go?" Karen ignored him. This is harassment. I'll be filing a complaint." The taller officer sighed. "Ma'am, you did file a false report. That's a serious offense. We're going to need you to come down to the station for questioning." Her mouth opened, then closed. "You can't be serious." "Completely serious," the officer said. I didn't say another word. I just crossed my arms and watched as the scene unfolded. The very same woman who had been so proud of her clipboard now trying to argue with two actual lawmen. It didn't end with cuffs, not that day. But the humiliation was worse than any fine. She had to do the walk of shame, escorted back toward her house while every neighbor watched in stunned silence. Gina came up beside me, whispering, "I've waited weeks for this moment." I grinned. "Worth it?" "Oh, absolutely." Later that night, I sat out in the garage again, the Mustang gleaming under the soft glow of the overhead light. I ran my hand along the hood and exhaled slowly. "You handled that pretty well," Gina said from the doorway. "I've seen worse," I replied. "But something tells me this isn't over." She frowned. "You think she'll try again?" "She's the type who doesn't quit. Not until she's burned everything around her." I closed the lockbox and slid it under the workbench. "Let her try. Next time, she won't just embarrass herself." Because now it wasn't about the car anymore. It was about the truth, and I had the badge, the experience, and the patience to bring it all crashing down. For a few days, Willow Ridge was silent. No more letters, no more threats, no more drone humming above the roofline. It was as if the entire neighborhood had taken one long, nervous breath and was waiting to see what would happen next. But peace in this place never lasted long. Karen Truman disappeared from sight for almost a week. No HOA updates, no surprise inspections, not even her usual morning walks. Gina said she'd probably gone to lick her wounds. I said she was regrouping. People like Karen don't vanish, they retreat, plan, and return sharper than before. Still, the silence felt strange. I kept busy tuning the Mustang, trying to drown out the tension with the soft hum of the engine. The sound was therapeutic, a reminder of something pure, something my father built with his own hands. One afternoon, while tightening the carburetor, I heard footsteps behind me. Tony was there holding a brown envelope. "You might want to see this," he said quietly. Inside were printed emails, HOA correspondence he'd managed to get his hands on. "My wife's on the mailing list," he explained. "Karen forgot to blind copy everyone. Guess she's not as perfect as she thinks." I skimmed the pages. There were threads between Karen and the HOA treasurer, messages about adjusted fines, expedited impounds, and something that caught my eye instantly: towing arrangement confirmed, same as last quarter. Split remains 60/40ths. I looked up. "What is this?" Tony lowered his voice. "There's been talk for months. Cars getting towed for violations that didn't exist. People paying to get them back. She's in on it, Chief. Everyone suspects it, but no one's had proof." I slid the papers into my folder. Until now. That night, I told Gina everything. She listened quietly, then said, "So she's not just power-hungry. She's making money off it." "Exactly," I said. "Fake fines, fake impounds, maybe even fake invoices. And if she's forging city seals, that's felony territory." Gina smiled faintly. "Looks like we're back on duty, Chief." The next few days turned into quiet investigation. While the neighbors went about their lives, Gina and I gathered evidence like old pros. She handled the digital side, pulling up HOA financial reports, scanning email headers, tracing message timestamps. I focused on physical evidence, copies of letters, receipts, the impound sticker, even the surveillance footage from my cameras. Every piece pointed to one thing: a coordinated scam. Karen, her treasurer, and a man named Wes Holbrook, owner of Holbrook Property Solutions, a towing and salvage company, were running a racket. They targeted residents with minor or made-up violations, towed their vehicles using fake citations, then sold them off at auctions run through Holbrook's private sales. It was brilliant in a sick way, a perfect blend of greed and legality, hidden behind paperwork and HOA authority. One night, as we were sorting through documents, Gina looked up from her laptop. "Frank, you're not going to like this." I leaned over her shoulder. On the screen was an email thread between Karen and Holbrook. "Next pickup scheduled for Saturday morning. Dylan's vehicle should be ready by then." Let's make this one look official. He won't know what hit him. My heart thudded once, hard. She wasn't done. She wasn't scared. She was planning to steal my car. Gina looked at me. She's really going to do it. Yeah, I said. And this time we'll be ready. The next 48 hours were all planning. I called in an old friend, Sergeant Mike Davis, still active duty. I told him everything, sent the documents, the emails, the photos. His response came quick. This is serious, Chief. We'll handle it discreetly. Keep eyes on them. Don't engage until we've got full authorization. But I knew I couldn't just sit and wait. We set up hidden cameras around the garage and driveway. Small ones, disguised in flower pots and porch lights. Gina connected them all to her laptop, live feed recording. Think she'll actually show up? She asked. I smiled grimly. Karen doesn't bluff. She'll show up, and she'll bring help. Friday night came and went quietly. The Mustang sat gleaming, polished and perfect, like bait in a trap. At sunrise, I heard it. The low rumble of a diesel engine creeping into the street. Gina looked at the monitor. Tow truck, she whispered. I peered through the curtain. There it was, Holbrook's white flatbed, crawling toward my driveway. Karen stood beside it, clipboard in hand, phone pressed to her ear. George leaned against the truck, trying to look tough but looking terrified. This is it, I muttered. The truck reversed, its rear ramp clanging as it lowered. Karen gave the driver a signal, quick, sharp, like a commander giving orders. But before the driver could hook the winch to the Mustang's axle, 3 unmarked cars rolled in from the other end of the street. The first one stopped right behind the tow truck. Out stepped Sergeant Davis, flanked by 2 officers from the fraud division. Morning, folks, Davis said cheerfully. Beautiful day for a tow, huh? Karen froze mid-sentence. What's going on? Davis flipped open a file. City Fraud Unit. We've been investigating unauthorized towing operations linked to your HOA. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? Karen's face drained of color. The driver stammered. I was just following orders. Davis smiled. From who? His gaze shifted to Karen. I stepped out of my house, hands in my pockets. Morning, Karen. I see you brought backup. Her voice trembled. This isn't what it looks like. Oh, it's exactly what it looks like, I said. Only this time, the cameras are rolling. I pointed to Gina on the porch, holding her tablet. Live video feed flashing across the screen. The trap had sprung. They didn't arrest her right there, not yet. But the investigation was now official. Davis collected statements, seized the tow truck, and promised me the department would handle it from there. As the vehicles pulled away, Karen stood frozen, eyes hollow, clipboard hanging limp at her side. I walked past her and gently closed my garage door. Next time, I said quietly, knock first. When corruption hides behind a white picket fence, it's easy to miss the cracks. But once you see them, you can't look away. After the sting at my driveway, the whole neighborhood buzzed with gossip. Some people congratulated me quietly. Others avoided me altogether. But everyone knew. Something bigger was happening inside the HOA. Karen vanished again, but this time not out of shame. It was fear. Sergeant Davis dropped by a few days later, out of uniform, carrying a thick manila folder. He laid it on my kitchen table with a heavy sigh. You were right, Frank, he said. This goes way deeper than just fake fines. Inside the folder were pages of bank records, property transfers, and emails. Every line pointed to the same 3 names: Karen Truman, Wes Holbrook, and Eugene Latner, the HOA treasurer. Davis flipped through the evidence. They've been running this racket for over 2 years. Holbrook tows the cars. Latner handles the paperwork. Karen makes it look legitimate through the HOA. Then they sell the vehicles under Holbrook's company at auction. Gina leaned forward. How much are we talking? Davis exhaled. Conservatively, 200 grand, maybe more. And here's the kicker. Part of the money's being funneled into a shell account linked to a property development firm. Development firm? I asked. Yeah. Trinity Horizon Builders. Looks like they've been planning to buy out sections of the neighborhood. get a few more violations on record, tank property values, then swoop in and buy cheap. I sat back, jaw tight. So that's the game. Force people out with fake fines, then profit off their desperation. Exactly. Gina shook her head. Unbelievable. All this just to make a few bucks off the people they pretend to protect. Davis closed the folder. The department's building a case. But we'll need airtight evidence, not just paper trails. We need one of them to incriminate the others on record. I smiled slightly. You mean, get Karen talking? Exactly. That night, Gina and I sat out on the porch, the glow from the Mustang reflecting off her tablet screen. She's going to crack, Gina said. She already has, I replied. But we're going to help her along. We planned it carefully. Karen still had one weakness, pride. Even cornered, she couldn't resist talking down to people. And there was one place where she loved to gloat. The monthly HOA meeting. It was coming up in 3 days. Gina smiled. Public setting, plenty of witnesses, and she won't realize she's walking into a trap. Exactly, I said. All we need to do is give her a reason to talk. The night of the meeting, I arrived early. The community hall smelled like old coffee and copier paper. Rows of folding chairs faced a long table where Karen and her board usually sat, pretending to manage community affairs. When she walked in, heads turned. Her perfect posture was back, her hair tied too tight, her smile stretched thin. But her eyes, those told the truth. She was nervous. Still, she greeted everyone like nothing had happened. Good evening, neighbors. Thank you all for coming. I stayed quiet in the back row, waiting. She started her usual monologue about community values and upholding standards. It was the same rehearsed garbage as always. Only this time, I could see the cracks in her performance. Halfway through, I raised my hand. Karen's eyes flicked toward me, and her smile twitched. Yes, Mr. Dillon? I'd like to ask about the towing procedures, I said casually. Specifically, who authorizes them? The room shifted uncomfortably. Everyone knew what this was about. Karen's tone turned brittle. The HOA board does, Mr. Dillon, as per the bylaws. And does that include vehicles that are, say, legally registered, owned, and parked on private property? Her jaw tightened. If they violate community appearance standards, yes. Interesting, I said. And does the HOA typically coordinate those tows directly with Holbrook Property Solutions? A ripple went through the crowd. A few people turned to each other, whispering. Karen laughed stiffly. I'm not sure what you're implying, but we only work with certified vendors. Vendors you profit from? Her smile finally cracked. Excuse me, I stood up. Because the city police department has records of several payments between your treasurer, Mr. Latner, and Holbrook's company. Money that didn't go into HOA accounts. The room went dead silent. You don't have any right to accuse? Actually, I interrupted, pulling out my phone. You gave me the right when you called the cops on me, because when they investigated your complaint, it became public record. And now, everything connected to it is fair game. Her face was pale now. This is slander. Gina, who'd been recording the whole exchange, stepped forward. No, Karen. This is evidence. And then it happened. Cornered and furious, Karen snapped. You think you're so clever, Frank? You think you can ruin me? You have no idea how many of you live here because of me. Those cars paid for half the upgrades in this neighborhood. The words hung in the air, raw, unfiltered, and incriminating. Davis, sitting quietly in the back under a baseball cap, tapped his phone once, recording complete. Karen realized too late what she'd said. Her face drained of color. I didn't mean... Oh, you meant it, I said quietly. Every word. The room erupted. Neighbors stood up, shouting, demanding answers. Latner tried to slip out the side door, but Davis intercepted him, flashing his badge. Karen's composure shattered. She stammered, "This is all being taken out of context." "Don't worry," Gina said. "We'll play it back in context for the city attorney." That night, after the meeting, Davis called me. "We've got everything we need," he said. "The DA's authorizing charges. Fraud, Forgery, conspiracy, the whole deal. I exhaled slowly. Took long enough. He chuckled. You know, most people would have moved out. But not you. Most people haven't spent 30 years hunting down crooks who hide behind paperwork, I said. The next morning, unmarked cars pulled up outside Karen's house. For the first time since I'd moved to Willow Ridge, I watched her curtains twitch in fear. Officers escorted her out in handcuffs, clipboard nowhere in sight. The neighborhood gathered silently as the woman who'd ruled them with fines and threats was finally driven away. Gina slipped her hand into mine. You did it, she said softly. I shook my head. We did it. And now this place finally gets to breathe. It had been 2 weeks since the arrests. The HOA was in shambles. The board dissolved overnight. Half the neighbors walked around like they'd just woken up from a bad dream. For the first time since we moved in, Willow Ridge actually felt quiet. But quiet doesn't always mean safe. Because if Karen was the face of the operation, then Holbrook, the towing company owner, was its spine. And people like him don't fold easy. Sergeant Davis called me early one morning. Frank, he said, we've got a problem. What kind? Rookie kind. Officer Miller. You remember him? Yeah, I said. Sharp kid. Fresh out of academy. Why? He volunteered to dig deeper into Holbrook's financials. Followed some leads up near their storage lot by the old industrial park. I paused. And now we can't reach him. The words hit hard. Miller was young, maybe 24, smart, hungry to prove himself. The kind of kid who reminded me of myself before the badge got heavy. You think he's in trouble? I asked. Davis sighed. I think he found something he wasn't supposed to. That evening, Gina found me sitting in the garage, staring at the Mustang. Davis called, she said softly. I heard. I nodded. You're going after him, aren't you? Yeah, I said. Can't just sit here while some rookie gets buried for doing his job. She crossed her arms. Then you're not going alone. The next day, we drove out to the industrial park. The place was half abandoned. Rows of rusting warehouses, cracked asphalt, weeds pushing through the concrete. Holbrook's lot sat at the far end behind a chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. A sign read, Private property, authorized vehicles only. We parked 2 blocks away and approached on foot, staying in the shadows. Through the fence, I saw what I expected and what I feared. Rows of towed vehicles lined up like trophies. Some were stripped for parts, others still intact. Among them, a few familiar plates, cars from Willow Ridge. But one thing stood out. An unmarked police cruiser, parked off to the side, door ajar. Gina whispered, That's him, isn't it? I nodded slowly. Yeah, Miller's car. We circled to the back gate, which was padlocked but flimsy. I picked it quietly, old habits die hard, and slipped inside. The smell of oil and rust filled the air. Every sound echoed like thunder. We searched row by row until Gina pointed. Frank, look! Near the back of a warehouse, I saw a trail of scuff marks leading to a side door. I pushed it open carefully. Inside, the light flickered dimly. And there he was. Miller sat tied to a chair, bruised but alive. His head snapped up when he saw me. Chief, easy kid. You're all right. I cut the zip ties while Gina checked for injuries. What happened? He coughed. I found ledgers, real ones. Proof Holbrook was laundering money through dummy repair invoices. They caught me taking pictures. Where are the files now? He gestured weakly toward a metal cabinet. In there. I locked them before they could grab them. I opened it, rows of ledgers, flash drives, and printed receipts. Exactly what we needed. Before we could celebrate, the sound of footsteps echoed outside. Heavy, deliberate. Holbrook's voice followed, deep and calm. I told you to keep your nose out of my business, Chief. I turned. He was standing in the doorway, 2 of his men behind him. Big guys, tattooed, the kind of muscle that didn't ask questions. You really should have stayed retired, Holbrook said. You think you can waltz into my property and walk out? Depends, I said, keeping my tone even. You planning on stopping me? He smiled thinly. No, but the cops you called? They're not coming this time. My people know how to buy silence. Gina stepped forward, eyes fierce. You really shouldn't have said that. Holbrook laughed. Why's that? I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and turned it around. The screen was still recording. Because you just confessed, I said. His smile vanished. You think that's enough to stop me? Not yet, I said. But this might be. Right on cue, the sound of engines filled the air. Not tow trucks this time, but unmarked police vehicles. Davis's voice blared through a loudspeaker. Holbrook, step away from the building. The men froze. Holbrook's face drained of color. You set me up. No, I said quietly. You set yourself up. I just gave you the rope. Within minutes, the place was crawling with officers. Davis stormed in, weapon drawn, and quickly secured the scene. Miller was escorted to an ambulance, still clutching one of the ledgers. As Holbrook was led out in cuffs, he glared at me. You think this ends with me? You've got no idea who's behind this. I know enough, I said. And whoever's next, they'll get the same treatment. He spat on the ground, smirking. You just made powerful enemies, Chief. Good, I said. I've missed the company. Later, as the sun dipped low, Davis patted my shoulder. You realize you just cracked open half the city's underbelly, right? Wouldn't be the first time, I said. He grinned. Still got it. Never lost it. Gina smiled from the car, waving the folder of evidence out the window. You done playing detective? Almost, I said. One more thing to settle. Karen? She tilted her head. You think she'll talk? She already did, I said, watching the tow yard behind us fade in the distance. Now it's time to let everyone else hear it. There's an old saying in police work. You don't hunt snakes. You wait for them to slither back. After Holbrook's arrest, it would have made sense for the others involved to scatter. But the kind of greed that built their operation doesn't vanish overnight. It festers, looking for new ways to survive. Karen's confession at the HOA meeting had exposed part of the scheme, but the DA needed more to shut the whole thing down. The deeper financial links, the hidden money trail, and that meant drawing out whoever was still hiding behind her name. So we set a trap. It started simple. Gina posted a listing on a classic car forum under an alias. 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 429. Full restoration in progress. Rare find. Private sale. Serious buyers only. The photos were gorgeous. Taken by Gina herself, the car shining like molten red glass under soft garage light. The listing was bait, and it didn't take long for the sharks to bite. Within 24 hours, 3 messages came in. 2 were normal. 1 wasn't. The message was short, typed in all caps. Interested. Cash ready. Need to see in person. No questions asked. No profile picture. No name. Just a username. TRN Developments. When Gina saw it, her expression hardened. Trinity Horizon. That's the development company Davis mentioned. I nodded. They're still playing the game, and they think I'm selling. We sent a reply. Viewing available at the Willow Ridge Community Hall. Saturday 7 p.m. private showing for verified buyer. Then, with Davis's help, we wired the place for sound and set up hidden cameras. The Mustang would be center stage. Saturday arrived. The community hall was empty, save for the polished car sitting under a soft overhead light. The polished chrome reflected like a mirror. The same car Karen once called an eyesore. Gina checked the feed on her laptop. Cameras live. Audio clear. Davis's team is stationed outside. Good, I said, tightening my jacket. Let's give our guest a warm welcome. At 7:12 p.m., the door creaked open. 2 men entered first, suits, slick hair, expensive watches. Developers. Behind them, a familiar face walked in, trying to look calm and failing miserably. Karen Truman. Her hair was down this time, her expression forcefully neutral. But her eyes darted around the room, scanning every shadow. She thought she was in control again. One of the men stepped forward. You're the seller? That's right, I said. You must be from Trinity Horizon. He nodded. We represent interested buyers. Our associate, he gestured to Karen, helped us make the connection. She says you're eager to part with the car. I smiled faintly. Depends who's buying. Karen crossed her arms, forcing a smirk. Let's not play games, Mr. Dillon. You and I both know this car's more trouble than it's worth. You should be grateful we're willing to take it off your hands quietly. Quietly? I repeated. You mean like all those quiet vehicle removals you arranged with Holbrook? Her smirk faltered. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do, I said, taking a step closer. You called the cops on me over this car. Tried to have it towed. Had your people break into my garage. And now, after all that, you show up here, with the same company that's been funding the entire scam. The developers exchanged nervous glances. Karen's voice rose. You have no proof. I smiled. That's the best part. I don't need to. I pointed toward the projector on the far wall. The lights dimmed automatically, and Gina's voice came through the speakers. Playback initiated. The screen lit up with video crisp and clear. Footage from the HOA meeting. Karen's face, red with anger, shouting, "Those cars paid for half the upgrades in this neighborhood." Gasps filled the hall. Then, audio from the tow yard, Holbrook's voice echoing through hidden mics. You think you can waltz into my property and walk out? You just confessed. My own voice replied. Karen's composure collapsed. You can't use that. It's illegal. Davis's voice boomed from the back of the hall. Actually, ma'am, it's perfectly admissible under state consent law. She spun around. Davis and two officers stepped out of the shadows, badges catching the light. The developers froze, realizing what was happening. I turned back to Karen. This isn't about a car anymore. It's about the people you hurt, the families you extorted, the homes you nearly stole. And you thought you could buy your way out with one more sale. She backed up, trembling. You set me up? I nodded. You set yourself up the day you called the cops on me. Davis stepped forward. Karen Truman, you're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. One of the developers tried to run. Didn't make it 3 steps before 2 officers pinned him to the floor. The other just sank into a chair, face pale. Karen's eyes welled with tears. You ruined me, Frank. I met her gaze calmly. No, Karen. You did that the moment you thought the law was your toy. As she was led out in cuffs, I turned to Gina. She exhaled slowly. That was incredible. Justice usually is, I said. We watched from the doorway as the police cars pulled away, red and blue lights reflecting off the Mustang's glossy hood. For the first time in months, I felt the weight lift from my chest. The neighborhood could finally rest. Gina smiled faintly. You know, she said, you could have just sold the car and retired quietly. I looked at the Mustang, the polished chrome gleaming like the past refusing to fade. Maybe, I said, but some things aren't meant to be sold. Some things remind you who you are. She chuckled. Still the chief, huh? Always. Every community has its moment of reckoning. A day when the masks fall and the truth steps into the light. For Willow Ridge, that day came during the annual HOA Gala night. Ironically, the event Karen had once organized every year to celebrate order and unity. Now, she would be the star for very different reasons. Even after her arrest, there were whispers that she might show up. Some neighbors still defended her, calling the whole thing a misunderstanding. Others wanted to see justice happen with their own eyes. The city attorney and Davis thought it was the perfect place to close the case publicly, to clear the air once and for all. And me? I wasn't planning to speak, but I'd brought something that would. The Willow Ridge Community Hall was glowing with fairy lights and soft music. People mingled awkwardly, pretending everything was normal. But you could feel it, that electric tension before a storm. Gina stood beside me near the back, wearing a calm smile that didn't quite hide her anticipation. You sure about this? She asked. Absolutely, I said. She built her little empire in public. It's only fair it comes down the same way. At 7 p.m. sharp, the microphone crackled to life. Ladies and gentlemen, said a nervous interim board member. "Thank you for joining us for this year's HOA gala. Before we begin, we'd like to address some recent developments." That's when the doors opened. Karen Truman walked in. Gasps rippled through the crowd. She wasn't in cuffs, not tonight. Released on bail, dressed in a navy suit, chin held high, and that same brittle smile. It was the smile of a woman clinging to the last threads of her illusion. Beside her was George, his usual arrogance dimmed but not gone. He scanned the room like a boxer entering a ring he wasn't sure he could win. Karen walked straight to the front. "Good evening, neighbors," she began, her voice polished and cold. "I know there have been rumors, but I want to set the record straight. Everything that's happened is a misunderstanding, fueled by gossip and false accusations." Her tone was pure theater, practiced, rehearsed. I let her speak, let her dig. She continued, "I have always served this community with integrity and transparency. I tapped a small remote in my pocket. The lights dimmed. The projector behind her flickered to life. At first, she froze mid-sentence, as the screen filled with video. Her own face from the HOA meeting, shouting, "Those cars paid for half the upgrades in this neighborhood." The audience gasped. Then came Holbrook's voice from the sting operation. "You think you can waltz into my property and walk out? You just confessed." Finally, her voice again, sneering, cruel, from the day she tried to tow the Mustang. "You can't intimidate me, Mr. Dillon. I'll be contacting the authorities." The lights came back on. Karen's face had gone completely pale. "Turn that off," she shouted. "That's illegal. You can't." Davis stepped forward from the crowd, badge flashing under the stage light. "It's not illegal, ma'am. It's evidence." The crowd erupted. Murmurs, shouts, disbelief. Some neighbors started filming on their phones. Others just stared, stunned, realizing they'd been paying fines to a fraud. George took a step back, muttering, "Mom, we need to go." But Karen wasn't done. She wasn't capable of backing down. She grabbed the mic, shouting over the noise, "You think you're all so righteous? Everything I did was for this community. You ungrateful." Her voice cracked under the weight of her own anger. Then, from outside, came the low rumble of an engine. A familiar sound. Every head turned as the doors opened again, and in rolled the red Mustang, gleaming like fire under the hall lights. Gina drove it slowly up the aisle and parked at center stage. The crowd gasped, clapping instinctively. The car looked perfect, polished, powerful, alive. I stepped forward, microphone in hand. "This," I said, gesturing to the car, "is what she tried to steal. Not just the car, the history behind it. The pride, the honesty, the hard work that built every family on this street." Karen stood frozen, speechless, the truth painted in chrome and reflection before her. "Karen Truman," I said clearly, "you called the police on me, forged documents, and nearly destroyed this community. But the worst thing you did wasn't breaking the law. It was forgetting what real respect looks like." Davis nodded to his officers. They moved in quietly, guiding her away from the microphone. George stepped forward, voice trembling. "Wait, she didn't mean to." "She did," I said gently. "And it's time to face it." Karen's last words as she was led out weren't angry. They were small. "I just wanted people to listen." The crowd stood silent as the door closed behind her. Minutes later, the tension melted into relief. Neighbors began talking, laughing, shaking hands. Someone turned the music back on. Tony came up beside me, smiling. "You sure know how to throw a party, Chief." Gina laughed. "He always did like dramatic endings." I ran a hand over the Mustang's hood, the reflection of the crowd glimmering in its paint. "She thought this car was a trophy," I said quietly. "But it's a reminder that integrity doesn't rust." Davis joined us, grinning. "The DA's gonna love that footage." Between her confession and the developer's statements, this case is airtight. "Good," I said. "Then maybe people can finally sleep easy." He nodded. "You ever think about coming back?" Department could use someone who still gives a damn. I smiled. Nah, I've got my piece right here. Gina leaned against the car, watching the lights dance across the hood. You think the neighborhood will ever forget this? Not a chance, I said. But that's not a bad thing. Sometimes, remembering is what keeps people honest. Outside, the night was quiet again. The stars hung low over Willow Ridge, the street calm, the air still. As we pulled out of the parking lot, the Mustang's engine purred like it knew. The storm had passed. And for the first time since moving here, the road ahead finally felt clear. The weeks that followed the gala felt different. For the first time since we'd moved to Willow Ridge, the air was light. No threat notices, no clipboard patrols, no drone humming outside our window. Just the sound of birds, sprinklers, and neighbors learning how to smile again. The HOA that once ruled the community with fear was officially dissolved. The city's investigation confirmed what we already knew. Karen's organization had been a front for a criminal enterprise. Her arrest led to a domino effect. Holbrook faced multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and falsifying state documents. The developers who partnered with him were charged with conspiracy and property racketeering. Even Latner, the treasurer, flipped early, trading testimony for leniency. As for Karen Truman, she pleaded guilty. 3 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of document forgery, and obstruction of justice. The judge gave her 6 years in state prison, with the possibility of early release after 4. When the verdict came out, no one celebrated loudly. Willow Ridge wasn't that kind of place anymore. It wasn't about revenge, it was about release. A few days after the sentencing, I was out in the garage polishing the Mustang when Tony walked up, carrying a couple of beers. Figured you earned this, he said, handing me one. Appreciate it, I replied, cracking it open. He looked at the car, smiling. Hard to believe this thing started all of it. Funny how trouble always finds a shiny object, I said with a smirk. Tony leaned against the doorframe. You know, folks around here are starting to call it the car that cleaned the neighborhood. I laughed. Not sure that's a title I want. Maybe not, but it's the truth. You stood up when the rest of us were scared to. You made us remember we had a voice. That part hit me harder than I expected. I'd spent my whole life enforcing laws, chasing criminals, balancing duty with decency. I thought retirement would mean leaving all that behind. But maybe you never really retire from doing what's right. Later that evening, Gina joined me in the garage. She brushed her hand over the Mustang's hood, now gleaming brighter than ever. She's beautiful, she said softly. Yeah, I replied, almost finished restoring her. Just needs the new carb. Gina smiled. You've been saying that for 3 months. I like having something to fix, I said. Keeps me grounded. She tilted her head, studying me. You know, when we moved here, you said you wanted quiet. I did. Still want it. I looked at the car, at its polished steel and the ghost of my father's reflection in the hood. Quiet's nice, I said, but I think I wanted something else more. What's that? Purpose. Gina smiled. You found it. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail, official seal, city header. I opened it carefully. It was from Officer Miller, the rookie we'd rescued from Holbrook's lot. Chief Dillon, I wanted to thank you personally. You probably saved my life. I've been reinstated and transferred to investigations. When I grow into half the leader you are, I'll consider it a success. Also, I finally bought a car. Not as nice as yours, but I think I'm off to a good start. Stay safe, sir. The department still talks about you like you never left. I folded the letter, smiling. The kid had grit. He'd be fine. That weekend, Willow Ridge held its first real community gathering. No bylaws, no speeches, just neighbors and families cooking together in the open park. Kids ran through sprinklers, old folks laughed over folding chairs, and for the first time, I saw everyone acting like neighbors again instead of suspects. Tony stood by the grill, flipping burgers. You think we'll ever get another HOA? He asked. Maybe, I said, but this time, they'll remember what happens when power meets accountability. Gina nudged me playfully. They should just make you president. I laughed. No thanks. I've arrested enough presidents for one lifetime. We both laughed. Then she leaned her head on my shoulder. You did good, Frank. I wrapped an arm around her. We did good. Later that night, I sat alone in the garage. The Mustang's engine purred softly as it idled. Alive again after years of silence. I closed my eyes and listened. Not to the noise, but to the peace beneath it. I remembered my father's voice. Keep her running, son. And I realized he wasn't just talking about the car. He was talking about life. About doing the hard thing even when it's easier to stay quiet. About standing your ground when everyone else looks away. The headlights glowed softly against the walls, painting the garage in a warm red hue. Outside, the street was calm. No more flashing lights. No more conflict. Just peace, the kind you earn, not the kind you buy. Before turning off the lights, I whispered to the car, like I always did, thanks for keeping me honest. Gina's voice came from the door. Talking to her again? Old habits, I said. She's listening. Gina smiled. So am I. I smiled back. Then we're good. We stepped out, closed the garage, and walked together into the quiet night. A neighborhood finally free. A story finally finished. The Mustang sat behind us, its engine cooling softly. A heart still beating, a promise still kept. They say justice comes in many forms. Sometimes it's a courtroom verdict. Sometimes it's a signature on a warrant. And sometimes it's simply silence. The kind of silence that follows chaos. Not empty, but peaceful. Earned.